Welcome back, everybody, to the ATL Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Shepard. I'm joined today by Coach Bret Hoyer. He is a coach at John F. Kennedy Senior High School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He's also a member of the Iowa High School Baseball Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He knows Coach Chico, and he was sent over to us today by Coach Chico, so we're excited to have him on. It's first high school coach that we've had on. And doing these podcasts, I wanted to give different perspectives for our current high school players and our travel org players. So I think having on a reputable high school coach would be beneficial, and maybe can shed some light on the recruiting process and developing of players and his story through the eyes of a high school coach, not just a college coach or another travel coach. So Coach Hoyer, go ahead, introduce yourself today. Tell us something we might not know, a little bit of your journey. I read that you attended Wartburg and you decided at some point around your junior year that you wanted to coach and teach. So go ahead and give us a little bit about your backstory and how you got where you are today.
Yeah, I went to Wartburg College, obviously to get a degree, but also wanted to be able to play baseball. And Wartburg's a Division III program in Waverly, Iowa. And my high school coach thought it would be a good fit for me. So we took a visit up there, and I really enjoyed my conversations with everybody associated with Wartburg, including the head baseball coach, John Kurt. And so I decided to go there. I was initially going to be a sports psychology major. And then somewhere along the way in my sophomore year, I realized that the calculus classes I was taking was going pretty easily for me, which I think is not very common, and started to look at different career options associated with a mathematics major. And there's research, there was actuarial science, and then, of course, there's teaching and coaching. Would have been after my junior year. I could stay up in Waverly in the summer and coach a 13, 14, and 15-year-old, what was called a Babe Ruth league team, and deliver pizzas. Or I could go up to Minneapolis and become an actuarial intern with Mass Mutual. And I struggled, a really difficult time figuring out what I wanted to do. I chose to coach and deliver pizzas, and had a very positive experience. And so I decided to go the route of education. Became a teacher and a coach, and went up to Sioux City, Iowa, my first year out of college, 21 years old, and I'm out at Sioux City Heelan. I'm a varsity assistant football coach, varsity assistant basketball coach, varsity assistant baseball coach, math teacher. $17,000 a year was my contract, and a lot of Taco Bell dinners.
I got my undergrad in education, elementary education, actually. And
okay.
we did not get into teaching and coaching for the money, that is for sure. And I think we all know that getting in, and usually the ones that don't know that getting in get out really quickly. Quickly. You kind of know what you're signing up for. But I mean, it's rewarding. I'm sure, what you taught for 31 years.
At Kennedy. So I was 1 year at Heelan, and then I went back to Iowa City after 1 year at Heelan to get my master's degree. I wanted to go into, at the time, I was interested in coaching at the collegiate level. And so I knew I needed my master's degree. So I went back to Iowa and worked on my master's, and my alma mater was Iowa City Regina High School. And of course, University of Iowa was in Iowa City. So I went back to Iowa to pursue my master's degree, and Regina had a part-time math teaching opening. So I took that, went to school full-time for a year, and taught at Regina part time, and then the next year I went full time at Regina. First year at Regina, I was an assistant coach to Joe Auer, who's a Hall of Fame basketball coach at Heights High School in Wichita. He's won, I think, 6 or 7 state titles at the big school level there. He's phenomenal. He's somebody you should have on just to talk about coaching philosophy in general. Was his assistant for a year, and then he, of course, was down in Wichita, and so then I took over full time after that for 3 years at Regina, and then summer of my third year, Cedar Rapids Kennedy called and asked me to come up and interview for a math teaching job and head baseball job there. And I've been there was there for 31 years. So I'm still coaching there. I just retired from teaching last summer, and now I'm a retired math teacher after 36 years total, and still going to keep coaching baseball.
What do you get tired? You get bored? I mean, my grandfather retired, and he never really retired from teaching. He went and subbed. He went and taught night classes, GED classes. I mean, he never actually really retired, and he
Right.
can't. He's like, I got to keep doing it. So
Yeah. No, and there's always things to do. Yeah, for me personally, I never get bored. No.
um, so a lot of our listeners or people that would listen probably are unaware or unfamiliar with Iowa plays high school in the summer,
Yeah, yeah, late spring, like May
right?
through the end of July, hopefully.
Which is actually smart because the weather in Iowa, not the most fun in February and March, and
Yeah, well, you coached at Iowa Wesleyan, and you were in southeastern Iowa, so you had the better of the two. I played up in northeastern Iowa.
yeah,
Oh man, it was brutal at times.
the wind is something that I'll never forget the experience of like when people whoever developed bone chilling wind, like the term had to be from Iowa because like that's what it was. The wind would just cut through you and it's flat and all that. So go into a little bit about if you're playing high school baseball at that time. How does travel ball work?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you're, for example, at the varsity level, it they play their travel ball in this miserable weather uh, in the springtime, and so like our guys are, and we don't have to do a whole lot of travel. We're really fortunate in Cedar Rapids with Perfect Game and a facility called Prospect Meadows. They've got 8 full-sized diamonds. They're all 400 feet to dead center. 330 down the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Field turf infields, natural grass outfields. So they can play there. I mean, unless it's lightning out, they can play there. But it's out in the country, and it's the wind, like you said. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
horrible at times. Once in a while, we get some pretty nice weather. We had some weather at the end of February. We used one of our optional hitting days. I think it was February 27th or something like that. It was crazy. It was 65 degrees, no wind. It was gorgeous. But then we get a stretch like this week. We've done nothing this week, and we won't do anything this week. And then our travel ball team, it can be called American Legion. It can be called Babe Ruth. It can be called AAU. It can be called PG, whatever it is the kids decide to play in. They're going to go play against a rival school's field down the street with their American Legion team, and they have a field turf infield, natural grass outfield. But no, the weather tomorrow night, to your point, the wind chill is going to be 25, 30 degrees. Nobody wants to be out there playing baseball in that.
That's crazy. So, I mean, your quote unquote travel ball is really local to Iowa.
Yeah, for the most part. Now, the lower levels, the 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, they'll get out and they'll
Right.
travel. One of our eighth graders that we've promoted to our ninth grade team, for example, he plays with an organization called the Cedar Rapids Reds, and this weekend they're going down to Kansas City. A lot nicer for them. So we're in a really good location for travel ball, in my opinion, with the facility we now have, like I said, at Prospect Meadows. We're an hour and a half from Des Moines. We're 3.5 hours from Omaha, 3.5 hours, 4 hours from Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Madison, Kansas City, St. Louis, 4 hours. So our kids in our area have a fantastic setup to develop their baseball skills by playing some terrific competition in the Midwest if they'll travel.
Hmm.
Some kids, some coaches, and some youth teams, they consider themselves travel, but that's because they have to drive to the ballpark in Cedar Rapids.
Right, right.
They never leave the area except for maybe the state tournament once a year and go to Des Moines. Well, that's not travel ball.
So is there some of the higher level recruits or players in the state? Do you see them not playing for their high school and joining, I mean, a big travel organization out of Chicago maybe and traveling around the country with them? Like what that the dynamic is so interesting to me. It makes sense to play high school later on for the weather purposes where you're at, but I couldn't fathom like just how in Atlanta we're playing baseball throughout the summer and there's teams from all over the southeast that come to Atlanta to play in perfect game and PBR showcases and tournaments. It's like that's the way of life down here, and that's what I know. So I'm just curious how some recruits that want to play college baseball in that are in the state of Iowa, how do they go about feeling like they get seen enough from colleges and they can get out enough, or do they just say, do you have kids that just say, I don't want to play high school because I want to go travel to Kansas City and I want to travel to St. Louis and all these other places so I could get seen better? Because that's something I deal with is like as a recruiting coordinator, the question I get is like, how do I get seen? So how does
Right.
that work for you or maybe organizations in your area?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, Perfect Game, Jerry Ford helped create that whole organization, and they are absolutely tremendous at promoting kids. Especially, I think he's got a soft spot in his heart for Iowa kids. I mean, he's just tremendous. Him and his son and the other people that he got started off with. I remember when they first started. He's really been good for Iowa kids. There's another organization that started recently called PBR Baseball. They've done a really good job at their showcase events.
Hmm.
Kids go to showcases year round, December, whatever. They'll travel and go to a showcase, and there'll be all kinds of coaches there. Kids will play perfect game baseball in the fall. They're always going to big events with other travel ball teams in the fall. I feel like my high school kids, where they make the most improvement, is in the fall when they go play travel baseball in the fall. Again, because of our facility, I coached my son in perfect game baseball. I coached him in the fall leagues. I coached him in the spring leagues. The spring league perfect game stuff. Again, the weather was just miserable. And when we're doing our spring league in Iowa, the other teams were playing our Iowa teams. We don't really play a whole lot of quote travel teams because the kids from the other states are playing their high school season. Well, in the fall, then we see the elite travel teams, and they're coming to Cedar Rapids because the facility at Prospect Meadows is just crazy. Before Prospect Meadows, my son and I were traveling all the time to Jacksonville, Illinois, or Racine, Wisconsin, Chicago, Des Moines, wherever. So there was a lot of travel, but in the fall, that's when we're seeing some of the elite travel teams, at least Midwest elite travel teams. And that just helped my son a ton. I mean, his junior year, he's pitching in a downpour because we could with field turf against a team from Lombard, Illinois that had 8 Power 5 D1 kids in the lineup. And he did fine. He got done with that, and I said, Braden, you're not going to pitch against anybody like that in high school baseball that has 8 Power 5 D1 players in the lineup. I mean, and look how it went when you threw strikes. No problem. I mean, you were able to get them out. So they develop so much confidence in playing against that caliber of competition. And the kids that don't do that, from 10, 11, 12 years old on up, a lot of times when they get to the varsity level, if they haven't done that, they're intimidated. They know what kids from other schools have played the elite level. And a lot of times the kids that haven't competed against them, they get intimidated. But when they play that caliber competition their entire life, like Chico did that, his dad was big on that, as well as his coach, the guy named Todd Ambrosi. That whole class was a very special crew. 2010, 2011, 2012 was his graduating class. I think we play about a 40 game schedule, and we won north of 30 games every year, went to the state tournament every year, conference champs, state champs in his junior year. So it's just incredible what they can do.
I would say it's definitely noticeable the kids that have played tougher competition more often.
And the
Not
college coaches know our kids that are good. I mean, that's one nice thing too. At the summertime, the college coaches aren't in season,
right.
so the head college coaches are at our games.
Hmm.
And it helps them a ton. Now, some kids, to your point, will play travel ball instead of play for their high school team. And I have an opinion on that. With Iowa, when you're playing in the summertime, we have great weather in the summertime, and we get tremendous crowds. I've gone out of state and watched some spring league games down in Florida, Alabama, during our spring break, which is typically the last week of March, third week of March. And I'm going to see the number one ranked team in the country. I think it was Tate High School in Florida. This was, 25, 30 years ago. And they were playing Pensacola East. Huge game. I mean, I was going, this is going to be awesome. No gate, maybe 25 people there. It was crazy. We go down the road and play Cedar Rapids Xavier, and we'll have 750 to 2,000 people there, depending on how we are. And so our kids, there's some kids that love travel ball, and I think their dads love it a lot because they can filter the performance with how they tweet, how their son did in a game over down in Cape Girardeau or St. Louis or Memphis. There's nobody from the Cedar Rapids area down there watching them play. We have no idea how they did. Did they really do all that well? Yeah, they threw 92 miles an hour. All right, great. Did he get anybody out? What else happened? Oh, you don't hear that. But when you're playing, at Herkelman Field in Northeast Cedar Rapids, and there's 500 people there, you're exposed. You're there in front of everybody. So there's a lot of kids that do really, really well in the club circuit, but then when they got to, at least we think they do really, really well in the club circuit, but then when they've got to perform in front of their classmates and their friends and people in the community and the local media, then they struggle. They really have a difficult time there. So I just think it's really important. If I was a college coach, I'd want to see, how do they perform in front of people that are actually there to witness their performance, and they're not just hearing about the performance by daddy's tweet.
It's crazy how you're correct. It's not crazy how you're correct. Sorry. It's you are correct. It is crazy how much social media affects recruiting. And like everything in the world, like we always want to go to the one end of the spectrum and say like, oh, now we have moved to just social media is everything. When really like some of it is social media is it needs to be used, but also like you said, it can't be everything because you only get so much of the story, right? Like some kids, you could throw 50 pitches and you could take 7 of them and put them in a video and put them on social media, and you could throw 7 strikes when really you only threw 14 out of the 50 pitches for strikes anyway, so you got seven of them,
Exactly.
and they all look good. And there's some kids that get offers from that, man, and it's frustrating, it's discouraging, but it's the world we live in. And
And to that point, if, college coaches, rightfully so, want multi-sport athletes, okay? When are your travel ball tournaments in the summer? Are they Monday through Friday, or are they typically over the weekends, Thursday through Sunday?
Thursday through Sunday, and then some of
Right.
them bigger ones, you get the
A full week, maybe.
yeah, you get the full week
Well,
ones.
we play high school baseball Monday through Friday.
Hmm.
We get great crowds. We try not to do much on Saturdays and Sundays. So now we're multi-sport athletes. Chico, he's a starting quarterback on the Kennedy football team. Now he can go do 7-on-7. His brother, the same thing, starting quarterback in football. He could go do 7-on-7 on the weekends. One of Sammy, Chico's brother Sammy, his best friend, teammate, was first team All State basketball, first team All State baseball. Well, weekends now he can go play basketball, and some pretty nice tournaments and develop his skills that way. But if he's doing travel team baseball, it's tough, to be a multi-sport athlete in that situation. For us, it works out. It works out really, really well. And our best players typically are multi-sport athletes. You get a catcher like Chico, and the bright lights have no effect on him because he's been the starting quarterback.
Hmm.
And Sammy's, our best pitcher, right? And no big deal. Let's go. I mean, we had to bring him up as a ninth grader to pitch, right? And a lot of ninth graders would, really have a hard time. No, Sam's like, no big deal. They're used to, they're used to it. They're used to being there in that environment. And no, they're not anywhere where their performance can be filtered. You're authentic right there. You know what you're getting.
I mean, it's probably also a product of the not the culture, but just the different regions that we're in. Like in Atlanta, we, I mean, we battle that all the time. The 7-on-7 in the summer, and football is huge down here, obviously, and
Mm-hmm.
it's you want to be mad at the football coaches for just doing their own thing, and some of them work with you, but like a lot of them are just like, hey, I got a job to do. This is when I can get the most kids there. This is when I got to do it. Some of them are okay if your guys miss for baseball. Some of them are like, no, not at all. Some of them are like, if you got a college coming to see you that day or whatever, then we'll be lenient and whatnot. But like we battle that all the time, and the amount of stuff, like there's kids that are coming to a baseball practice straight from a basketball game, when they're younger. I mean, it's crazy. It's good because we do want multi-sport athletes. The demand for each, it's no longer like basketball is from October through February, and baseball, and then that's it for basketball. Baseball's from January to April, and then baseball you get like May, June, and July is our American Legion season, and then football starts towards the end of that, and then football is from here to here. It's not like that anymore. It's so it's so year round because everybody wants to maximize the dollars. They want to maximize the training. They want to maximize, like, well, if you want to be the best baseball player, then you need to play baseball 12 months of the year, and it's crazy, but it's just the world we live in. And I mean, I imagine that's changed so much over the course of your time coaching. And I mean, that's another interesting question I have for you, because I one of my best friends was my high school coach, still is my high school coach. We talk often. um I didn't have a great relationship with him when I was actually in high school, because like most kids, I thought like he was just trying to screw me over. And then what, my last year in Legion Ball, it's actually a car ride that I didn't have a ride to, and he took me, and it was the most awkward first 30 minutes car ride, just trying to like, do I talk? I'm like an 18-year-old kid. But after that car ride, I just realized like this guy just loves baseball and wants to sit and wants to win. And he's not trying to see me not succeed, you know? But he always has an opinion on just how things used to be versus how they are now. And he's a good mix of like old school, but accepting some of the new things. So for you, like, I guess just touch on some of the things that have drastically changed over the years between maybe the weight training, the training environment, the recruiting aspect. I mean, go ahead and take that wherever you want, but that's interesting to me just to see the change and growth.
There, believe it or not, so this is my 31st year, 2024. What I've learned and observed when it comes to basically everything you summarized there, um, really hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot. 2000 was it? No, 1998, 1999, 2000. We had a kid named Drew Wold. He ends up playing for Rick Heller at the University of Northern Iowa. Rick's now the head coach at Iowa.
Mhm.
And he was a basketball player and baseball player. The basketball team went to the state tournament. Baseball team goes to the Final Four uh, that he pitched on. And um, during basketball season, Wednesday nights and Sunday nights, they were at the Perfect Game facility with his dad.
Thing.
So, so anyway, 2000 or 1998, 1999, that's what they do, right? Well, here, let's look at 2024. Same thing. Except it's kind of player run now. They're going to another indoor facility called Dugout Sports that just opened up last few years. A lot of the pro guys from the area go work out there in the months of December and January before they go to spring training. And there's our kids are working out in the same facility as those guys are. And when are they doing it? Well, we got multi-sport athletes, right, in the wintertime. So what do? They do the same thing. Wednesday nights, they're there. Sundays, they're there. So if you're a multi-sport athlete, in my opinion, and I tell my kids this, you need to be a multi-sport athlete. You know, during the summer, you know, I used to be the offensive coordinator for the football team years ago. And if I'm there at our, we call them OTAs, if I'm there at 6:30 in the morning, you better be there at 6:30 in the morning. Yeah, we're going to have baseball practice at 9, but we're going to be from 6:30 to 7:30. We're going to be working on our passing game, right? And my starting quarterback might be my best pitcher, like Chico was and Sammy was. Guy Martino set all these records in football. Same thing. He was our number one pitcher. Well, yeah. Now, if we had a doubleheader the night before, you know, 2 hours away, it's 100 degrees out. Yeah, guys, you're taking the day off. You
Mhm.
know, and our head football coach is great at that. I mean, he gets it. When we have our heat advisories or whatever, he has no problem with our baseball, football kids missing a particular football workout because he also knows if we have a real quick one, you know, Sammy and Zach were pitching one year. We won 2 games, 1-0. The doubleheader was over in 3 hours. Game's over by 8:30. We're leaving the park by 8:30 at night. Well, you better be at football the next morning. There's no reason you can't get out of bed and go to your football workout the next morning. You're going to be fine. Or a basketball workout, whatever it is. You know, get up, get out of bed, and go work on those sports. If you're truly a multi-sport athlete, if you're truly a coach that supports multi-sport athletes, then you're going to encourage your kids to go do those other sports during your sport, or else I believe you're hypocritical at best, right? Get your butt out of bed, go work out with your coach, and get better. I want to see you win in all sports. I don't want to see you just win in baseball and then us be, you know, lousy in the other sports. I want to see us compete at the highest level in everything we do. And if we're in a sub-state final, you know, in basketball, if we're in the quarterfinals in football, I mean, holy cow, what an environment to perform in. Now, when you're in the sub-state final in baseball, hey, you're not one of those kids I think is going to get all tense and tightened up and not be able to perform. You know, we need you to go do that. And it was that way in the late 90s, and it's still that way today. And then you talked again a little bit about going to the college level. God, the biggest mistake that I see, and it was this way back in 1995 and 98. Everybody wants to have that D1 Power 5 scholarship. Well, years ago, when Iowa State had football, or baseball rather, we'd have players that would go there because they were getting a $100 scholarship because they could then say they were, Power 5 D1 player. Well, they never played a lick. We had a kid named Adam Rice, hit 500, led the state in home runs, was in the top 5 in stolen bases. Nobody wanted him. As far as any D1 or D2 schools, they didn't want him. So he ends up going to Elgin Community College in Illinois.
Yeah, very
which was
good.
great because he got to play. He played all the time, and he played so well, so frequently that there was a school in the Southeast you might have heard of called Coastal Carolina.
I
Recruited him.
may have heard of them.
Yeah, you may have heard of them. And so he goes and he plays all 3 years. He's playing in super regionals against North Carolina in the starting lineup, right? Just phenomenal. So, I see tweets on this every once in a while, especially from frustrated junior college coaches. And I feel you. These kids need to go where they're going to play. I don't care if it's junior college, NAIA, D2, whatever. If you want to develop, and if you're really good, they'll find you now, especially now with NIL. We have a coach at Mount Mercy, Jack Dom, does a great job. He coached at Iowa, now he's at Mount Mercy, and he'll tell kids that, hey, come here, play here. You do really well. I'm going to help you get to the D1 level, right? But come here, NAIA school. We got great facilities, full field, turf field, gorgeous facilities, great coaching staff. He recruits great coaches too. And he's honest with the kids and says, if you perform here, I will help you go to D1. He actually tells them he's going to help them get to the higher level. Mm-hmm. And I think more coaches would benefit from that philosophy, in my opinion.
We had Coach Dom on, actually. He was one of the first
okay.
few people. Yeah. So Chico set that up. So all right, let's get back on the rails here.
Good idea. Yeah.
I don't even know what we were talking about before, but we'll just I'll transition to something else.
Oh yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, and
from my perspective, they haven't.
Right.
But my best teams, my best players, were players that played the highest level growing up. Back in the '90s, it was called CABA, and if they weren't traveling, getting out of Cedar Rapids and going to play other all-star teams, well, either A, we weren't going to be very good, or B, if you were on a team like that, the players in the class ahead of you and class behind you, 2 classes behind you, are going to be playing ahead of you. My second year, we're starting a 9th grader at first base that played a really aggressive travel team experience growing up, and it's the same way now. It's we have a feeder program that Chico and Sammy came up through, and they were an unusual situation, more unusual now than it used to be, in that Todd Ambrosi is the guy that coached Chico's age group growing up, and they went all over. And that's the reason why we went to the state tournament 3 times, Final Four twice, state championships. And then Sammy, was 3 years behind Chico, and his dad, Jim, coached him with Zach Daniels' dad. And they went all over. And that's why we went to state in 2014, 2015 with those guys. Well, it's because of that experience. If they're not playing AAA level, major level, I don't know what they call it in Atlanta area, but USSSA, if you're not playing AAA level, major level for multiple years, you run the risk of being odd man out when you get to the varsity level. You may not play much, or just be a role player type player. It's unusual to have a group come through that just played the AA level baseball, just played local. Very unusual for that team to enjoy the degree of success that so many other Kennedy teams have enjoyed over the years. But when we had parents that were on board with doing that, great. Now, by and large, we have parents of those kids aren't, but there'll be a few kids that then leave our feeder program and go play for some of the top tier travel teams in the area. Well, yeah, guess what? Those kids are playing when they're juniors. You see, those kids are promoted. We'll have a couple eighth graders that play that caliber ball, and they'll be playing on our sophomore team at some time this summer. We'll have we got a couple freshmen right now that played that high level, and they by the end of this year they might be playing a little bit of varsity baseball as ninth graders. We've got a really strong junior and senior class, so it's a little bit tougher. But our senior class, Dan Graw, that coached this group all the way up, boy, they're playing, and they're playing high level ball, and that's why we've won 29 games each of the last 2 years, Sweet 16 both years. Hopefully we can finally go a little bit further this year and break that 30 win number. That's pretty hard to get to 30 wins when you play 40 games in a year. In our area, we have some pretty strong baseball over here.
What give us some insight to practice setting, like Gio mentioned, and how the weight room and mental training helps. How much of that do you do at the high school level, and what are your thoughts and opinions on that?
That's another reason why I love summer baseball so much, is because of the time we have available to ourselves when school's out, and I've got access to the kids for so much. It's also another reason why I have no problem giving them Saturday and Sunday off, is because we're pretty demanding Monday through Friday. And I've had a parent or two accuse me of being a very demanding coach. And yeah, I don't apologize for it either. I don't apologize for the success our players have. Don't apologize for any of that. I know, there's a price. You gotta earn those wins. The other teams we play aren't just going to roll over and just give it to us. So you have to earn it, and we earn it Monday through Friday. I think what I'll describe to you, a lot of people won't be willing to do, and I'm okay with that. When school's in session, we're we're doing our strength training as part of their performance PE class. We have a strength and conditioning coach at our high school. Before we had that program, we'd have to come in at 6:30 in the morning. And as a matter of fact, Chico's sophomore year, we were coming in at 6 in the morning, 5:45, and doing our throwing, and then going to the weight room at 6 and lifting until 7. And then eventually we were fortunate enough to transition into what we call a performance PE program, where instead of what was then the traditional physical education class, now it's an actual plyometric, agility, strength training, and so on during the academic day. And that helps us a ton. So now the kids, you want kids to be able to get their sleep, okay, but then you're asking them to get up at 5:30 in the morning, and they also have homework. So it's kind of tough, right? Well, now that we have it during the academic day, that helps us a ton. So they get their strength and conditioning during the day. Then after school, we'll go out and practice, or if we have a game, we have a game. And we'll practice on Saturdays while school's in session. Then when school lets out, we'll bring the kids in about 9:30, 9:45. We'll do a little mental game training session in my classroom. It's not all that different from, I think, what Coach Corbin does at Vanderbilt. Sammy was a player development coach there, and he shared with me what they do with their classroom setting. And I think there's probably some degrees of similarity there, where we'll go through a lot of, mental game of baseball, heads up baseball, Brian Kane baseball, the Ken Ravizza, that sort of thing. Go through some of those lessons that they've taught us. And after we have about a half an hour classroom session, then a couple, 3 days a week, we'll go down to the weight room and we'll work out for about 45 minutes with our strength and conditioning coach. He comes in the summertime. He doesn't have to, but he does. Trains our athletes, and then we'll go outside and then we'll practice. If it happens to be a game day, our practice will be maybe an hour and 15 minutes. If it's not a game day, we'll probably practice for 2.5 hours. If it's a game day, some days it's BP, some days it's just a regular 1 hour and 15-minute workout. Then we go home and then come back to the park about 3:30, and we play a doubleheader, or we get on the bus 2:30, whatever it is, and go play a doubleheader. So yeah, you can do the math on the time there. Yeah, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And then of course there's days that we don't lift, so we'll still meet in my classroom. I've got kind of a curriculum that I've developed over 25 years. Um, of doing the mental game. I didn't do much of the mental game stuff early on, in the 90s, because I really didn't know whole lot about it, but I learned a lot more about it from the mental game of baseball, Dorfman and Keel's books and that sort of thing, and then started incorporating that stuff. And then I learned more about Ken Ravizza and Tom Hansen and, Brian Kane, and just it's kind of evolved into almost a full curriculum of a course. And then, so we always meet and cover something. And then if it's not a lifting day, well, then we'll go right outside. Hour and 15-minute workout, come back for a doubleheader, or 2-hour workout, 2-hour and 15-minute workout, something like that. Whatever it is we need to get accomplished. So,
I mean, it's crazy because you're either getting complaints that you don't practice enough or that you practice too much. I'm convinced that, I mean, obviously you're never going to make everyone happy, but there's
right.
one group that wants more and you can't give them enough. There's one group that whatever you give them is going to be too much. So like as a coach, you kind of just like, you got to just have conviction in yourself and how you coach and what you know, and roll with it. And people are gonna be upset. People are gonna complain, and you just gotta have thick skin. And you just gotta say, obviously, you gotta be willing to learn and change and adapt as a coach. But you gotta have belief in what you're doing and your coaching tactics and all that. I mean, I imagine over the years, you've probably heard it all, just with parents and expectations of parents and what their expectations of you are, like what your expectations of them are, and yeah, like good luck. What would be a piece of advice for you as a seasoned coach to a younger coach when it's
Yeah.
dealing with parents and those expectations?
Because who's right, who's wrong, right? Maybe you do practice too much. Maybe we are too demanding. Maybe we aren't demanding enough. Maybe we're too soft. I mean, nobody knows the answer to that. So when that comes my way, I think the bottom line just comes down to, as a coach, you got to understand why you're in this business, why you're doing this. You're doing this because you love kids. You're doing this because you want to see these kids get to a level that they couldn't attain on themselves, right? So a parent calls and makes that complaint. Really, you don't want to argue with them. You want to say, you know what, I understand what you're saying. I hope you understand I'm doing what I think is best for these kids. I love your son. I love your kid, all these kids. I'm trying to help them get to a level that they can't get to by themselves. And I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm doing what I think is best for the kids. So I'm sorry you don't agree with how we're doing it right now. I understand that. However, I'm going to continue things the way I see fit. And hopefully we enjoy a level of success that that the kids didn't even think they were capable of achieving, and try and run with that. And you know what? Some parents are still going to be really, really difficult. It's just part of the business, and you have to be able to, live with yourself. You gotta, that old Winston Churchill line. I'll tell my kids this too. You got enemies, good. It means at some point in your life you stood for something, and so you got to have a little bit of backbone, and you got to make a commitment to these boys that are, giving everything they can for you, and you owe it to them in return to give your best effort and make the decisions that you feel is best for the group of kids that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that best. You just do what you think's best for the kids that you're with, and the chips are gonna fall where they may, and like you said, you're not gonna make everybody happy, but that's the world we live in, and
A lot of times you just got to say, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'll try and get better.
mm-hmm.
Okay. If
Yeah,
you're
And I mean,
It's a
as
really tough to argue with that when you say, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm going to try and get better.
yeah, and I mean, it's always hard to look in the mirror and self-evaluate. Because you want to be, again, you want to have conviction with what you do, and you want to have a backbone. Um, but also you want to get better. You want to change, for the good, for the better, if you will. And it's, those are always. I think it is good to hear the criticism of some parents because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's tough because like I don't care what they think, but also I do care about them and their opinions, and I want to be conscious of like how what I'm doing is perceived because maybe that's not how I want it perceived, and I can teach it or tell it, or I'm doing something that is getting lost in translation between me and them, and it's a misunderstanding. So I mean, I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit of everything. It's a little bit of a grain of salt, um, but that's why we get into the game. I mean,
Right. And when you truly care about the kids, I mean, they see that, right? You know, that the saying, kids don't care how much they know until they know how much you care. You love on your kids. Um, we played the game, right? You played the game. You know, the game's difficult. A lot of times it's just simply telling the kids, hey, be patient with yourselves. Let's just keep grinding. All right. Good things are going to happen. We believe in you. Sometimes we get frustrated with you because we believe in you more than you believe in yourself. But and a lot of times it can be a one-on-one with a kid, and they just need to know you care. Pull them aside. I just had this conversation with a young man probably about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, do you want me to be easy on you? Huh? Do you want me to baby you? Do you want me to pamper you? Or do you want me to push you? What do you want? Well, of course, he wants to be pushed. I said, all right, then. I'm going to keep doing it. So I got on you a little bit today, but that's why, because I figured you wanted me to push you. And they'll be fine with it.
I always say like building the relationship with the player is the most important thing you can do because if you do that, then you can coach them how you think they need to be coached because everybody's different. Like some people, how to say, need to be like yelled at. They need to be pushed. They need to be told, this, that, and the other. Then some kids, you have to lay it on them much easier for them to respond. And if you have a relationship with that player, they understand where you're coming from and you understand where they're coming from, and I think I, I for me personally, when I was able to get away from like the old school, um, my way or the highway, like I'm always going to be harder than everybody because that's how I was coached. I mean, there was no patting on the butt. There was no coddling or it was seen as soft and I don't blame my high school coach for being that way because that's the way things were. Now we're dealing with a completely different player today, and when I first got into coaching, I really put up a fight to that, and now you realize that like it once you build that relationship with them, you can have those conversations, especially after you yell at a kid. The best conversations, in my opinion, that have happened have always been if I'd shoot a kid out and then we sit down after the game or an inning later, and it's like, hey, let's talk like let's talk about this. And a lot of times they're like, you know what, coach, you were right. They've calmed down, or I want to say, hey, I didn't approach that right. I did not need to chew you out like I did. And then the player will be like, nah, you didn't, but I deserved it, And then you come to like this mutual ground, and they understand where you're coming from, and you know it's it's all about that relationship, And I mean, I'm sure after 30 plus years of coaching and even teaching, it's probably so rewarding to look back on some of the relationships that you've built and you've had, and like a guy like Chico, and Sammy, like just seeing where they are and what they're doing and being able to, you know, call them and chit chat about baseball or life or whatever. That's what it's all about.
Right. Exactly right. And those relationships don't have an opportunity to develop, if you're kind of a horse's rear end,
Hmm.
as a coach. I mean, yeah, we've all been teenagers before, I've said that line to them before. Hey, I've been 17 years old before too. And none of you have been 57 years old. So you don't know what I know. And then say, I'm telling you this for your own benefit. Here's what you need to embrace and kind of go forward with that. And also, yeah, you own up to your mistakes. Hey guys, I'm human, right? I make mistakes too. If I could do it all over again, I'd have done something different, I'd have zig instead of zag there, or hey, I was too hard on Chico, you know, I apologize. Didn't need to say what I said. I'm human. I hope you forgive me. Um, when we make mistakes, we all screw up. We're all human. One, you got to own it. Two, you got to fix it. And three, do everything in your power not to repeat it. And we do those things together. Um, we model that, and then we embrace that when the kids, because kids make mistakes too, and we just talk to them about it and we say, hey, Sammy did this. What do you got to say, Sammy? And then he apologizes. I said, sometimes that's all you can do is apologize, right? You did something really dumb. Maybe you got to, replace something. You got to, hey, gonna pay for it. You got to go replace it, right? You broke a helmet, right? You threw a fit and slammed the helmet and cracked it. All right, bring me $75 and apologize. All right, you fixed it. Now do everything in your power to get control of yourself and let's not repeat it going forward. All right, you're human. All right, be patient with yourself. We still love you. Let's move forward. And then it helps a lot in those instances. If we're working with young people, we have to we have to understand and appreciate we did dumb things too. And I'm
Hmm.
so glad we didn't have social media when I was 16, 17,
Oh
18
man,
years old.
some of the
I'd have
people
been
around
idiot.
today would. I mean, they wouldn't have made it if there was social media around. Like some of the older coaches, like they forget they
Right.
had it much easier when it comes to, you know like my high school coach used to talk about when he was in high school. You would just drive around with a 24 pack and in high school, and you get pulled over. The cop just says, "I'm going to follow you home. Let's get you home."
Right.
Like,
Yep. I'm
and
calling your mom and dad. I know your mom and dad. Your dad's coming to pick you up. You handle it
yeah,
with him.
yeah, and no one was in. I mean, obviously, we need more stricter rules than that and laws, but like, I mean, if that would happen today, like that's getting talked about, that's getting
Oh yeah.
posted somewhere, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that's not the
They
punishment.
want to crucify the kid.
Yeah,
It's like, take him out. Come on. Yes, there's
yeah.
going to be consequences. You don't get to uh, impose those consequences. That's my job.
Hmm.
I'm working with this young man.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out going forward.
And I think one of my favorite sayings that I've heard, and I don't remember who I heard it from, and maybe it was Gio or um, head guy was, "I'm not going to treat everybody equally, but I'm going to treat everybody fair."
Yeah.
And I just think that's such a good line because, and it's true because no two kids are the same, and it's not always black and white, and maybe two kids did the same thing wrong 6 months apart, but you're going to give them some type of, the punishment's going to be different. It's, but people will say that you're showing favoritism or this, that, and the other, but it's like, no, I'm going to give them a fair punishment for whatever they've done, but it might not be equal to the same offense that another kid did. And I think, and again, if you have a good relationship and a good reputation, I think most parents and most kids probably trust that, and they probably trust you to do the right thing, um, even if they're getting the short end of the stick. That says a lot about you when your organization or your high school or your travel org or college, you can get to that point of stature, if you will. I don't know if that's a bad word for it, but where you've been doing it long enough where one of your parents complain that you practice too long, and then the other 6 or 7 parents set them straight and say, "Hey, it's long practice, but look at the track record. Look at the track record of the kids. Uh, I'd rather have practices. Maybe they are too long, but I'd rather be too long than too short, and we're not getting any development for our kids." And that just says a lot. I mean, you've been doing it for a
Yeah.
long time, and you've been doing it well, and you know, I think,
It's easy to talk about, on a podcast or whatever, about dealing with, kids making mistakes and having to impose consequences and that sort of thing. When you're in the emotional moment of the time of the event, it's not easy. It's tough as a coach, and any other coaches that are younger coaches getting into this. Here I'm 58 years old, 32 years as the head coach at Kennedy, and 3 at Iowa City Regina, and 35 total. It's not easy. When I got to,
mm-mm.
impose some consequences on this young man, yeah, you lose some sleep on it. And I
Yeah.
still, to this day, lose sleep when I've got to kind of figure out how are we going to handle this. I'm, of course, talking to my staff. Absolutely. I'm looking for advice, looking for feedback from them. And the other thing you got to understand, and you got to explain this to the parents too. If you don't have a meeting, I'd encourage you to have a meeting with parents early on and kind of lay out your expectations, and just tell them, you know what, I'm sure your son has made some mistakes at home every once in a while. Probably going to happen here too. And when there's consequences imposed, would really rather not visit about that, because trust me, your son, right? Well, his backup's parents, they're not going to think the consequences are harsh enough,
Always.
but you think the consequences are too hard. So myself as a head coach, I'm in a no-win situation here. Some of you are going to think I'm too harsh. Some of you are going to think I'm too lenient. Let's just get that out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So please don't call me when consequences are imposed for inappropriate behavior by your son. If he's not meeting the standards and expectations that we have for this program, well, then there's going to be some consequences in some fashion. End of discussion. Any questions? And at least you've laid it out there up front. And very rarely do you get a phone call. So just try and get out in front of it ahead of time.
I think, yeah, that's great. Actually, this is great advice for young coaches, and I mean, let's be realistic. Young coaches are going to hear your advice, but until they go through this situation, it's the same as when we tell college kids or high school kids, like, "Hey, man, I've been through this. Like, don't do it like this." And then they're like, "Oh, I mean, yeah, whatever." And then they're like, "Coach, you were so right. You were so right." Like, young coaches are going to make their mistakes, and you hope they take what you say into consideration before they make these mistakes. But yeah, I mean, if like you said, if you get out in front of it and you just communicate, most problems will be solvable, and you'll have a good, long, fulfilling career as a coach, and your players will love you, parents will love you, most of them, and
Most of
it's
them.
it's 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 really a rewarding profession, as is, I'm sure, teaching is. I could not do the in classroom teaching, not for 30 years anyway. I didn't think I could, so I got into coaching, and that was always teaching was always in my back pocket, if you will.
You're still a teacher.
Yeah,
Your
I mean,
subject is baseball.
yeah, 100%. And I mean,
You,
and when you're a coach, you wear more hats than just a coach and a teacher. I mean,
you're
you
still
are.
developing young people
Yep.
through the vehicle called baseball. And
Uh,
so just because it's not second grade doesn't mean you're not a teacher. You're absolutely a teacher.
so, Coach, we are the ATL Lightning. So we end each podcast with a segment I call the Lightning Round. Um,
Okay.
so short, quick questions, quick answers, mostly irrelevant questions. Just a little fun segment at the end. So you put pineapple on pizza.
I will eat pineapple on Canadian bacon pizza, yes, but no sauerkraut.
Why do we call it Canadian bacon? Why can't we just,
Call it ham?
yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I don't know.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Favorite baseball player?
Oh boy, Ryan Sandberg is one of my all-time favorites. Being a Cub fan growing up, uh, yeah, I'd go with Rhino.
Well, knowing you're a Cub fan, the next question I ask is pretty easy. I always ask Big Green Monster or Chicago Ivy.
Ivy.
Yeah. What's your favorite Gatorade flavor?
It's the traditional lemon lime. I'm sure the Lizarragas will be shocked.
Favorite sunflower seed flavor?
uh, God, they've gotten so many of them lately
So
anymore.
many.
Bacon Ranch has been pretty darn good.
Yeah, that one's good. Um, you have any pregame superstitions?
I'm sure I do. Superstitions, I suppose. I think I call them routines more than superstitions. And so, yeah,
They're
for
the
sure.
same. They're the same.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, for sure.
When you feel lost, when you get out of your routine, then it's a
I get
superstition.
I get to my lineup. I always have a card in my back pocket that has our lineup, has the opposing team's lineup. Where I kind of keep score on it, take notes on it, and
Where do you keep
I
your
pull,
pen? Where do you keep your pen though?
keep my pen in my back pocket too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
When I would
yeah,
coach, that's I.
yeah, in my back. No, I could never get it in the hat. I always thought those guys looked pretty cool, but I tried it and it didn't work for me.
I
And
actually
I always got to have the pen that clicks,
yeah.
pilot bit. So I'm constantly kind of a nervous thing clicking on that thing.
What are you pro or anti shift?
I think they got it right. I like what they did right now. Get them as far over as they can go without all the way over.
Do you like the pitch
I
clock?
like that. Now we'll full shift from time to time, but I like what Major League Baseball did with that, and I like the time clock too.
Yeah.
Love it. I think that's one of the best things they ever came up with.
Last question I
That's
got.
just my opinion. I know not everybody agrees with me, but
Actually, I have
um,
two left. I have two left for you. Well, you'd be interested. I get a lot of interesting answers on that from baseball guys. So, uh, artificial turf or natural grass?
natural grass. But if I had artificial turf at Kennedy, I'd be really happy, just because I can't, take
I,
care
I,
of it.
I think everybody says. I mean, I love natural grass, but like
Natural grass with a
the
pro ground screw, yes, that's perfect.
yeah, but with the way
But
things
with
are
ice
today,
flow,
like I gotta give me turf. You know, I feel
yes.
that I used to do all of our fields at Oglethorpe, and we had a beautiful surface with ryegrass, and I'd stripe it up and putting patterns in. Like, oh, I loved it,
Now you're talking.
and but just the amount of time you get back in life when you have turf, and the amount of games you can play, and getting a field ready, putting it to bed. It's just the amount of time saved is ridiculous. But nothing will beat a well kept grass infield.
Exactly.
Watering the infield is therapeutic. Cutting the grass is therapeutic. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's
I
my
mean,
fave.
yeah.
It's
Wrigley
my
Field,
favorite.
Wrigley Field versus the Tampa Bay Rays Tropicana Park, whatever it's called. Oh no, Wrigley Field, natural grass, absolutely.
Adam Sandler or Vince Vaughn?
Adam Sandler, but I do like Vince
I mean,
Vaughn.
I picked two good ones. I picked two good ones. So,
Yes, you did.
Coach, that's all I got for you today. So I appreciate you joining. Um,
Thanks, Michael. Give my best to Chico.
I will give your best to Chico. I will reach
His
out to
family's
you.
unbelievable family. I'm sure you've met him.
I have not met his family, but I did meet his brother.
Oh, Okay.
So
When his mom and dad come down, they are salt of the earth.
yeah,
Just fantastic. Yeah.
I'll have to tell them to take us out
Yeah.
to
They'll
dinner
be
then.
down there for a Braves game pretty
Oh, I'm
soon.
sure they will. I'm sure they
Yeah.
will. So
So
I will get a hold of you when I have pointing lab puppies available.
awesome.
If I'm going through Iowa, we will stop and we will
Yes.
go out and watch the dogs run, or when
Yes.
my dad
Absolutely.
travels through.
Yep.
Lord knows he'll be on his way to North or South Dakota or
Sure.
Kansas somewhere to pick up a dog at some point. So thanks for coming on today, Coach. I'll get this thing cut up, edited, and then I'll send it to you before we post it out there, probably within the next week or so. So I appreciate it, and good luck in the upcoming season.
Same to you, Coach. Thank you.